Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Go Live.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Dean. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm good. I don't normally get to see you because there's usually someone sitting right here.
Very important person right here.
Very important. In fact, she's kind of a big deal.
She is a big deal.
Our big deal is traveling today, so she sends her regrets, and she foolishly let us be in charge of the studio. So she might regret that later on, but we'll do our very best.
Absolutely.
That's right. So obviously this is Dean Stalter, our broker of record. I'm Brent Considine. Oops, can't do that. Brent Considine, Vice President of Business Initiatives, and we welcome you to Go Live.
Go Live.
And today is Tuesday, February 7th. It is flying by.
What is that, 42 days into the year?
Oh, your math is better than that. It's 38. 38 days. Today's the 38th day.
-4.
There you go. You were close. You were close. Okay, well, I'll give you one more shot. How many days are remaining?
A lot.
You've been talking to too many attorneys. 327 days remaining, and we will be here for each and every one of them, and plenty of time for you guys to close escrows. So let me back up for a moment, and we have to introduce our trusted crew, because without them, we would probably just be sitting around talking to ourselves.
Exactly.
No one wants to watch that.
Nobody wants
So Sam, Shawnee, Christina, you guys there?
Yes.
Where's Sam? Oh, come on, get your face in there.
There he
All right,
is.
there we go. That way, if something goes wrong, we can blame it on him because they
He's
saw
so
him.
shy.
It's very shy. So we have a special announcement that we're going to do at the very end. So Martha may not be here, but we have something that is very near and dear to her heart that we're going to talk about. So please stay tuned to the very end. I know you will anyway, because we have such a great topic. It's 1031 exchange, everything 1031 exchange, and we have our very favorite Kayla Furking back again. I think this is her 4th or 5th time, so you know you're popular when we keep coming back.
Back by popular demand.
Back by popular demand. But we'll have her on in just a moment. But before we do, so again, stay tuned to the very end. We will let you know what that's all about. We have some special guests in here to talk about a very special initiative that's near and dear to our heart, pun intended. Okay, but let's go to our call outs, because it's the first Tuesday of the month. And that means that I get the honor of mentioning everyone who has an anniversary with us.
Oh, fantastic.
So these are all the agents that are with our company that are celebrating an anniversary in February. And to keep it simple and to keep it fair, we do it in the first year, and then we do it in increments of 5 years, right?
Okay.
So year 1, year 5, 10, 15. If you know how to do math, Dean, you could figure out the rest. If you know how to
Otherwise,
do
it
math.
could take a pretty long time.
It's going to take a long time. So the slide we're looking at is the first half of all of those agents that have joined us a year ago, last February. Oh my gosh, what a year they had, right? And what a year they're in for. Here's the second half. So congratulations to each and every one of you. And as I like to say, thank you for trusting us to help you build your real estate career. We're excited to have you here. Next slide, please. And here we have year 5, 10, and 15. You can see I recognize several of those names. It is sorted by branch. So if you want to find yourself, find your branch, or do a shout out for somebody in your branch, you can. But again, thank you all for starting and continuing your career here with Berkshire Hathaway. We are very fortunate to have you on our roster. Couple more slides. Now we're going to, too fast. Christina's getting way ahead of herself. 20 years, look at that. So we got Beverly Hills, Newport Beach, and Santa Barbara. Philip, Jane, and Randy, thank you all for your amazing 20 years with Berkshire Hathaway. And then one more slide, because it even goes higher than that. 25 years.
Oh my gosh.
Carlsbad, Laguna Niguel, Glenn, and Ada, thank you both. I know you both, and you guys have an awesome career. So thank you for helping all of your clients with
Absolutely.
that. So, okay. Back to you, Dean. I know you have an ASA, a very important one you wanted to share with the group.
Yes, I was on a call last week with CAR, and it's a broker call. It's statewide, and we were talking about issues that come up in our practices. So we were talking about accidental property management.
Accidental.
So that's where generally people get into a legitimate, they write a lease agreement, they take a lease listing, or maybe they're even a listing agent and they have a tenant occupied property that they need to market. And so what happens is, I think it starts out easy enough. Real estate agents, I think by their nature, want to be helpful.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times they will overextend themselves in that endeavor. So as everyone knows, we don't do property management as a brokerage. We certainly do lease listings, we write leases, and once we have those tenants in possession, then our job is basically done. Our agency has terminated. So I just want to caution you that it's very easy, and I see it often, where just extending a little courtesy, like the tenant calls then after a week and says, oh, doggone it, my plumbing is backed up or my lights are out in the garage. In trying to be helpful, people will say, well, I'll just come over there. I'll send my handyman over to take care of that for you. And before you know it, you're doing the duties of a property manager. And the risk to that, especially in this day and age, is a lot greater than it ever has been. So I just want you to be aware and don't overextend yourself. Do your job, wrap it up when they take possession, and then step back and let the seller take or the owner take over. And that includes things like running background checks, security checks. Those things, we usually put the customer in touch with the source, but then we don't want to be the source or be translating what those reports say and then making a recommendation to our client. So just tell them how to get it, and then they got to make the call.
So two issues, really. The one you just brought up, before the lease is signed, all the due diligence, we don't want to be the one providing that information to the tenant or to the seller or to the landlord, direct them to the resources to get that done. And then the second half, which you started with, was when the tenant moves in, lease is signed, don't overextend yourself by doing small favors that then you, like you said, unintended, right?
Yeah,
you end up acting like the property manager.
That's absolutely right. In fact, on the front end, sometimes we get into fair housing issues because we make representations that maybe our owner is making, and then we don't think it through to say, well, we don't allow children in this complex or whatever it is. It's you just have to be so careful these days, and I just want to caution you on that.
Okay, so you're right though. Our agents do love to be of service, and they want to extend value, but they have to stay in their lane, stay in your lane. Otherwise, you might regret it, and we don't want that to happen to you. Exactly. So, someone who knows her lane really, really well, we're going to segue into our guest speaker right now, is Kayla. She has been on our show many, many times. And one of the reasons why we asked Kayla to come back today is something that our title folks, our people at Cal Title, have been telling us for many months now, is they've noticed a significant number of the closings that we've had have been for out of area or absentee sellers.
Right.
And so we thought, okay, if those transactions are happening, we wanted to make sure that our agents had all the knowledge available to them to know what's important to an absentee owner and how they might want to take advantage of what we call a 1031 exchange to avoid capital gains taxes.
Absolutely.
So Kayla, are you there with us? There you are.
Okay.
Welcome. Hi, Kayla. Good to see you again. We were joking when you were off camera. I think you're one of our few guests that have been back. Is this your fourth time or your fifth time?
I might be 5, maybe 4 or 5. I'm not sure. 4.
It's definitely 4. Well, we won't bother you until the 5th time, but we're going to do just like they do on Saturday Night Live, where the host, if you've been a host for Saturday Night Live for 5 times, you get this wonky, ugly green jacket.
Oh,
so
bring it on.
You might have a green jacket in your future. Lucky you.
I love it. Well, it's good to see you, Frank. Good to see you, Dean.
Thank you.
Likewise.
So for those that don't know you, Kayla Furking is now with Leader 1031 Exchange, correct?
Yes.
When we used to know you, you were the different company, but so you just moved to companies. So you've been in the 1031 exchange world for 7 years, and you've been in the real estate and commercial real estate for 13 years. So you obviously know a lot about what our agents are going through. You've walked in their shoes, right? And we just consider you a subject matter expert because you're so good at what you do. And what we particularly like, the feedback we get from your previous appearances, is you're able to take a very complex subject or what could be a complex subject and you make it very understandable. So we appreciate that very, very much about you.
Yes, I truly, truly appreciate that. I mean, it's good to have support for one another in our industry, especially right now. I know that we all had this exciting instant gratification rollout the last 2 years where we couldn't help but have our phone ring, right? So when you were referencing those title communication questions, and we're getting a lot of non-owner occupied listings and transactions, that's really primarily because we have all these interest rates, right? Another 7 basis or 75 basis points that just went up again, and then another potentially before the end of H1. So what are the properties being sold, right? Investment property. So that's kind of what we've been seeing too. And as I've mentioned before several times, for those of you who haven't met me in person at your office or seen me on Berkshire Hathaway Go Live before, when we look at the 1031 exchange industry, we always piggyback primarily off residential real estate. So when your numbers are hurting, we're hurting. So we're trying to do everything we can to give you the tools to succeed and to kind of pivot a little bit, if you're not familiar with the non-owner occupieds, to focus on that.
Yeah, it just makes sense if that's the type of sellers that are now transacting, right? Rather than going out to try to find business that may be harder to find these days, let's go where the opportunities already are growing. So
exactly.
So for those that may be new to our company, we're always hiring new agents. Would you take a moment and just kind of explain, if you could, the 1031 exchange process and why would an absentee seller be interested?
You bet. So that goes all the way back to your anniversary. I saw how many new agents. That is incredible. I love that. Keep fighting the good fight and stay around. We need good people.
Exactly.
So, what I specialize in is 1031. It's not Halloween. My little jingle, right? There's no tricks, just treats. So we focus on 1031. What is that? It is Internal Revenue Code. So IRC is what we call it, right? Fun acronyms in real estate. That tax code, that avenue, it really specializes in tax deferred exchanges. And by the word exchange, you sell investment property, and by use of a qualified intermediary, who I work for at Leader 1031, we hold those sale proceeds and then wire over to more real estate. You're exchanging real estate held for investment for more real estate and not touching the money, right? So from an aerial perspective, I like to say I'm in the business of moving money, right? I truly am. So all the way back, I was with a title company, right? So focusing on what a qualified intermediary is. I used to be with a title company, which was a fantastic company, and their subsidiary. They trained me a lot. Within 5 years, I loved being there, but it was bittersweet, kind of a time that I had an opportunity to become VP of the Western United States for this company and hire a team, right? So we have to kind of make those steps and push ourselves, and it was tough, but here I am. The benefit of that transfer, I'm currently with Leader 1031, a subsidiary of a bank, completely different because we're doing real estate transactions, right? However, we're backed not only by the bank that has FDIC coverage, we have fidelity and bond coverage, where the title company I was with was outsourcing a bank like Leader Bank, right? Or like Capital One, Citibank, whatever the bank is, right? Whoever you bank with. So that's kind of where I chose this avenue to have a more secure foundation for my clients' sale proceeds. With the new company as a qualified intermediary, we have the opportunity for digital escrow. So when we open these exchange transactions, we hold them in what's called kind of a sub account. You can call it an escrow account. For me, it's an exchange account, really. And so when we're doing that, I have that instant gratification to call my banking team. They set it up and we're ready to receive funds. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, right? We talked about, I know Frank, you asked why do a 1031, right? So when we think about buying a property and you're working as a buyer's agent, you go in, they go ahead to open escrow, you close escrow. That purchase price is classified as your basis, right? It's my basis. If your client is ever to sell that property, typically in California, they have ample gain, right? So when they go to sell that property, there are 4 components of capital gain taxation that are applied to that gain. Okay, so the first one is depreciation recapture tax at 25%.
Okay.
You have California state tax at 13.3%. We're the highest in the country. You have net investment income tax or healthcare tax at 3.8%. I'm not finished.
Yeah, these are adding up. Dean can't count that high.
Hey. And then last but not least, we have the federal level, right? So that could be 15%, could be 20%. You know, that's all contingent on your client's tax bracket and income. So we don't give legal tax advice ever as a qualified intermediary. We always have our clients outsourced to their CPAs and financial advisors for what their specific capital gains tax would be.
Well, thank you for saying that, because if Martha was here, she would have said that by now.
Yeah, she would
have
have
said, we're not giving out tax advice. Nope. Seek your own CPA, seek your own advice for your own situation. Now that we've got that out of the way.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So when we look at those numbers, and this is public knowledge, right? I would say on average, out of California, clients are paying between 35 and 40% minimum on capital gains. So if you have $1 million gain, right, you're paying about $400K to the government.
Ouch.
So list with you a Berkshire Hathaway agent. You're knowledgeable in the 1031 space, right? Go ahead, list the property for sale, call leader 1031. We go ahead, hold the sale proceeds at close, and you double end the deal and help them find maybe that new property that's available that they've always wanted, right? So that's the benefit. That's why we're seeing more people with investment properties selling right now. And Dean, Frank, I mean, in your experience, right, I know the numbers way back when I started were residential for primary sold on average 8 years, right?
Right.
Well, they turned over, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then same thing. So when we're looking at the investment, that was 5, right? Investment properties usually roll over every 5 years. So I'm a numbers person myself, clearly, what I do. When you're looking at that from a perspective as a realtor, if you start farming at least 100 non-owner occupieds, right?
Mm-hmm.
We look at that game, on average, 20 of those will be for sale a year, given that every 5 years, right? Investment property sells, granted the year of ownership.
And they sell more rapidly, or on a shorter time frame than the residential ones do.
Yeah, for the primary. Yeah, for primary homes, so the investment properties once every 5 years. So let's say you have 100 investors, 20 of them will sell a year. That's 20 deals for you, 20 listings. And that's obviously, I understand the conditions, but tax defer. You get all of your sale proceeds, the gain, and then maybe you can help them buy a replacement property or properties. So now you're assisting your client sell their property, save money on taxes, and diversify their portfolio.
And might result in a 1 or 2 or 3 subsequent transactions. So that's a good question. We had a question come up a moment ago on if you could describe like for like. You know, that doesn't have to be an equal exchange, right? And it doesn't have to be for the full amount. So,
Correct.
Okay, let's talk about that for a moment.
Yes. So like kind, there's verbatim for the tax code, you must exchange property held for investment, productive use, trade, or for business purposes, exchange solely for like kind property held for productive use in a trade, business, or for investment purposes. Like kind can be extremely broad. If you have a client that maybe wants to buy commercial or wants to buy land or a Delaware statutory trust, which is a securitized alternative investment, right? Hands-off approach. All of those classify under 1031. You don't have to go from a residential rental back into a residential rental. It could be a condo to single family. It could be a duplex to a fourplex. It can be, right, all of those different variations exchange for each other. We had a shift in 2018 that went from personal property exchanges strictly to residential, which is a benefit to all of us, in my opinion, on this call. And I know the question may come up. It does a lot based on the Biden family's tax plan, right? Did we eliminate 1031? Nope, I'm still here. So that would definitely affect everyone's jobs on this call. Eliminating 1031, you're talking about moving almost trillions of dollars a year within the United States. And again, IRC section 1031 is a federal tax code. Those like kind properties can go from California, you land that listing, let them know they can have a higher buying power on a replacement, maybe somewhere else.
Right.
Right. So at least you're getting that one listing and offering that knowledge.
Does it have to be actual property? Can they take the exchange and roll it into, say, a REIT or some sort of investment?
Great question. So it has to be real property, it has to have an APN, right? Classified as real estate, real property.
Okay.
A REIT is disqualified, right?
Okay.
Because we're looking at buying shares. If I'm a shareholder in a REIT, the REIT then would be on title as the entity that then owns real property.
I see. So APN, that's a key. It has to have an APN number.
APN.
You got it.
So can we take a moment and talk about the process? Like, when would
Yes.
our agent introduce you? And I know timing is always a big point of discussion when we're looking at
Yes.
finding properties. So let's take a few moments to talk about the timing of it all.
Sure, absolutely. So once the property is listed for sale, I recommend even sometimes before that, we can have a consultation. That's really just me jumping on the phone with you. If you want to relay the contact information to your client, great. We can do a Zoom, meet in person, which I'd prefer. Or, you can pass off my contact so that we get that preliminary conversation out of the way. A lot of investors are reluctant to list just based on what's happening. So if I can do anything to help on closing that deal and offer my knowledge for you.
And when you say closing the deal, this is before the property is even listed.
Correct.
So in a perfect world, would you like to be introduced to the would-be seller before the property is even listed on the market?
Before or during the listing.
Okay, but before an offer is accepted.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
That would be great. And once the offer is accepted, that's essentially when we come into play, right? I cannot set up an exchange until we have pulled a deed, right? So we know the grant deed is relevant to what you're matching to your contract, right? I need to make sure that taxpayer is the same. At that time, my team and I create what's known as an assignment. That's a document that dictates leader 1031 is assigned in as the new seller at recording. There's technically not really a recording with leader 1031. It's just really part of the tax code structure in G6 regs that state we now become this stand-in individual entity holding funds in lieu of the taxpayer touching the money.
Okay.
So let's say you get all the way to the end of your escrow timeline, your 17-day contingency is removed, your 21-day loan contingency, and you're ready to fund, right? So now that we have the assignment, we have a segregated account prepared for the destination of those proceeds. Day of close occurs and the sale proceeds are wired to us.
Instead of the seller.
Correct, instead of the seller. So we're holding those sale proceeds, and then here gets the juicy part, the timelines, right? Day of close indicates the beginning of a 45-day timeline. We call that the identification period, right? Within the ID period, there's 3 different variations of rules that I don't want to dive into too far on this go around, but they're restricted with some different caveats of how you hold, what type of investor you can detail these rules to. The takeaway here is they have to have that property in writing, timestamped, emailed to me or my team, qualified intermediary, right? Not the realtor, not an attorney, not title, not a friend, not mom, right? It needs to go directly to the qualified intermediary by the 45th day at midnight. After they've indicated that property, they have an additional 135 calendar days post day 45 to actually close. So the 45 plus 135 gives them an entire exchange period of 180 calendar days or 6 months. So, I mean, you think about it, that goes fast. 45
It does.
Yeah, sure could.
Yeah, in our last market, it went really, really fast.
It
So
sure did.
can you identify more than one, or do you have to identify one and then it has to play its course, and then do you get to go identify another one? How does all that timing work?
Yep. So you're essentially stuck with what you've ID'd, right?
Okay.
So maybe that's a bad word.
ID carefully.
Yeah, ID carefully. So let's say you're on day 40. Your client has submitted an identification form with 3 properties using a 3 property rule. That's one of our rules, most commonly used rule. That means they can ID up to 3 replacement properties at any total fair market value.
Okay.
They go ahead, they do that. And maybe day 40, they call me and they say, hey, property 1 and 2 already went under contract. Can I revise my ID form? Absolutely, they can, as long as it's before the 45th day. If they call me on day 46 with the same scenario, they cannot alter those ID properties.
And just to remind them, it's the day's clock starts ticking the close of escrow day.
You got it.
That's the point in time we need to be cognizant of.
Right.
Yes.
Starts the clock.
Yes. Yep. So that's the main focus, is finding the replacement. So when we have that consult in the beginning and we discuss, okay, this is what you're looking for, we can kind of use our momentum and our sales pitch in our world, everyone on this call, right, to focus on the with them, what's in it for me, right? Everyone has one on their head. I always say that, but what's in it for your client? So that's where we focus on, well, what do you want to buy? What would be your dream, right? Perfect. Let's go get that. And that's what realtors at Berkshire Hathaway are incredible with. So in my experience, yep. So when you focus on that, then we can look at what they have, right? And try to work those numbers, the timeline to get them to that dream destination. So yeah, that covers as far as the free property rule and timing.
What about the buyer? So the buyer that's on the purchase of the initial property, what impact do they have? What role do they play in all of this?
Sure. Really not much, I will say. If the seller's doing a 1031 exchange, sometimes I'm sure everyone has seen in the MLS just a cooperation clause, right? Buyer to participate in 1031 exchange of the seller at no cost to the buyer. They will have to sign off at the closing table our notice of assignment to buyer. That's just indicating that leader is collecting the sale proceeds on behalf of the seller at close, right? So really that's it. They're not responsible for anything. We just need a signature.
So that clause there kind of commits them to signing the paperwork that they're going to have to sign down the road. They can't say, I don't agree to this, even though it has no impact to them at all, really.
Correct. I think it's good to be transparent in the beginning. I've had a lot of deals fall out of escrow because we were at the closing table and they didn't know the buyer was doing an exchange and someone was uneducated. So if that happens and you're repping a 1031 buyer and maybe the new seller of the property they intend to purchase is unfamiliar, let's get on the phone with them. Let's do a quick education, right? So let's catch it in the front end. And when you're making that offer, a 1031 buyer, we're against our timeline. We want to close. Let's go. Right?
It's a kind of a pretty motivated buyer, I would think, at that point, if I was a seller, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would think that you'd want to get that spelled out in the right on the beginning of the transaction, in the counter offer or on the initial offer to purchase, that the buyer agrees to cooperate with the seller's 1031 tax deferred exchange. Just a commitment that they're aware of it.
Yeah,
absolutely, Dean. Yep, I agree. I think it's beneficial that way for all parties.
Yep. So I want to put our audience at ease because we've been getting a lot of messages about your contact information. Rest assured, you guys, we will make sure that you, by the end of today's presentation, you'll get Kayla's contact information. Sounds like you might already have a couple sellers that need, and our agents need to talk to you ASAP. So
yes. And
very cool.
I apologize. I'll be transparent with everyone here. When I left my company, I gave them a month to try to find a replacement and they countered, which was great. But, I was confident in where I was going. They gave me a week after that and they still are rerouting that old cell phone number you guys have back to headquarters. So kind of lost out on that one, but that's okay. So that's why if you haven't been able to get a hold of me, I've been kind of shut out, unfortunately, but that's how it goes.
But you do have a new email and you do have a new phone number, and we're prepared to give that out today because I know we've been talking to you. Oh, it's in the chat.
It is.
I see it in the chat right now. So awesome.
It is.
And we'll be sure to repeat that again. So we have a very advanced crowd. They're picking up what you're saying so quickly. So now they want us to talk. Now that we got the 1031 exchange process down, let's talk about a reverse 1031 exchange.
I pulled up in the chat too. Perfect. Okay. A reverse. Have I heard of one? Absolutely. I've heard of one. I love reverses. I kind of geek out on the reverses. I think I enjoy them the most because they're more complex. So it's better for me for solution oriented mindset. I want to find the piece to the puzzle, right? So when you're talking about a reverse, this is the client that maybe sees a very desirable replacement property prior to selling or listing the relinquished property. Now, two terms I use there. the relinquished property, the one being sold, replacement property, the one that we're now reinvesting all the cash or the net exchange proceeds and replacing the debt,
Okay.
right? So they go ahead, they buy that beautiful home that's called in San Clemente, right? They go ahead, you make an offer the same exact way you would with their name on title. You contact me at Leader 1031. We would go ahead and work with an EAT, which is an exchange accommodation title holder. Okay. So what happens there is the EAT title holder, they pull a shelved LLC, right? So they're working with Secretary of State. They have these on hand and they go ahead and place that LLC and a new recording on either the property being purchased or the property being sold. Okay. So let's say in this example, it's on the property being purchased. This new shelved LLC goes on title at recording. Okay. So now it's eased into there and day of close begins a timeline of 180 calendar days in reverse to sell the relinquished.
So actually a little less stressful than the first process.
It is the downside, pros and cons here. The reverse, the client has to have enough capital to buy the replacement on their own. Now, when I mentioned the LLC on title, a lot of lenders don't like to loan to a brand new LLC, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why we have the opportunity for a reverse A, where we put the LLC on the relinquished to allow the lender to loan to Jane Doe on the replacement. Right.
Without the LLC,
okay.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where there's a will.
Yeah, we can figure it. Sounds like we can figure this out. So at what point then, if I'm the investor and I'm buying the replacement property, do I need to bring you in before the offer is written, or can the offer be accepted and then you do what you described a moment ago and you get the EAT?
Yes, the EATs. Are we hungry?
Yes.
Yeah, so yes, I would like to be involved once escrow is opened. Again, I can't really do too much until that point. Okay. But again, free consultation, call me. I hate saying free consultation because of course that's what we do. I feel like until we're all at close, no one's getting paid.
Yes. So let's work together to get to the close.
Exactly. So
let's see what other questions we have. Okay, so Janice is asking us to explain the 135 days again. So I think this goes back to the non-reverse 1031. So I know the timing is really critical. So let's cover that one more moment if you could.
Absolutely. So I break it up different. That's probably why it's a little confusing. Sorry, Janice. I say it in a way that I think is just simplified. So day of close begins your exchange timeline of 45 calendar days to identify. So 123 Main Street, signed by Kayla Ferking, right? We're good. That's the property I want. After day 45, let's say I'm still in escrow and my close date is beyond 45. Within the timeline, I have an additional 135 days to actually perform and close on that replacement property that I identified at day 45. Okay. Right? So what happens there, 45 plus the 135 gives me a total of 180 days. I say it that way, again, simplified, but I think people think that you get 45 plus 180. You don't get an additional. The 45 is inclusive of the 180, right?
All right, makes sense.
I get it. So Randy's bringing up a good question. And since we've now talked about a traditional 1031 and a reverse 1031, he mentions that there's a difference in price. How are you paid? So is that paid by the seller, by escrow, by title? Can we talk a little bit about the cost between the two?
Yeah. So on a tax deferred delayed exchange, which is a traditional, is what we're calling it today, right? The traditional exchange, that fee is $1,250. That's a flat fee and it comes out of closing costs.
So regardless of the relinquished price, the replacement price, it's all a flat fee.
Yep. Okay. $1,250, $1,250. And it includes the sale of one relinquished and the purchase of up to 3 replacement properties. Again, using that 3 property rule.
Okay. And then for the reverse, is there a difference?
Yes, of course. The reverse, because you're using the I guess the fee structure of an attorney, right? With the EAT and the shelved LLC, it's a package. On average, they range between $8,500 to $10,000.
Oh, so
and that's coming out of pocket. Part of it is, I would say, on average, it's about let's say 8,000 out of pocket, and then the other 2 components are when a property sells. Right. And the property closes on purchase and it'll come out of both closing costs. So 85 to 10,000.
Wow. So there is, to Randy's point, Randy's often right. So there is a big difference. So
Yes.
you really have to either want the convenience of the reverse 1031 or the the replacement property you found or replacement properties you found you really, really want. And so you don't want to lose the chance that they get bought by somebody else. So you make the purchase before you sell the relinquished property because you are going to pay the difference.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And, I usually weigh that if a client, let's say, has that $1 million in gain, right? I mean, you're going to be paying $400,000. What's 8,500 to 10,000? And you get the property you want. So it's all relative to the investor and who you're speaking with. Some people go for it. Some people don't.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're seeing more often now, like, we were talking about absentee owners selling their California property, and then maybe they live in Ohio. And in Ohio, you can buy 3 properties for what you sold your California property for. So wouldn't that be a perfect vehicle to do a 1031?
Absolutely, it would. Yep. I think we've all seen, I don't know if I recall the numbers correctly. I think it was 33% to 40% of investors moved out of California in the last 2 years, right? I think I'm getting that. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. There's so many stats in my brain.
Well, that sounds about right.
Yeah, we were talking about those numbers earlier.
Yeah. So when you think about that, to back up your point there, of course, people are buying everywhere. I think right now my biggest states and purchases are Florida, number 1, Tennessee, number 2, and then a lot of Wyoming and Montana, believe it or not.
Interesting. We know people that have moved to each one of those states.
That's right.
So there you go. You're proving us right. There was a question a moment ago from Bill. I can't see it any longer. So Bill asks, can an owner-occupied single-family residence property complete a 1031 exchange out of area? Not sure if I understand that correctly. Maybe you do. So I guess you probably get asked that a lot. Can owner-occupied properties qualify for a 1031 exchange?
No.
No, it has to be an investment property. And who determines what defines an investment property?
So
Again,
let's
not giving
focus
tax
on,
advice.
we're not doing that. So there's 2 tax codes here in play that we're discussing.
Yep.
You have primary residence tax code. That's Internal Revenue Code section 121, right? So anytime you have someone that's listing their primary, they would go ahead if they're single filer and have $250K exemption on gain. Married filers double at $500K on gain. That falls under IRC 121. 1031, obviously you're not getting any tax breaks for owning a primary residence. You're actually paying more for investment, right? In the long run, and you're paying taxes on your Schedule E when it comes in. Schedule E is a document that CPAs use, right? When you're having rental income, whether it's Airbnb, a long-term rental, we're putting all those income numbers on that Schedule E. So when they're filed, the IRS is declared and aware that that is an investment property. So it's beneficial to have a paper trail, and that's how they kind of decipher. Yes, you can. No, you can't.
Okay. So we're definitely going to make sure, let's put in the chat if we can, Kayla's phone number. We're getting a lot of requests for that number. So again, make sure you don't have any plans after this. You're probably going to get a lot of phone calls and emails.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, about the up to 3 properties, but if an exchanger, if an investor does not want to roll the entire proceeds from the relinquished property into a replacement property, what happens if it's just a partial? Like what?
Yes. Yeah. So I see that from Russell too here on the Q&A, right? So based on values and what we're doing. So 2 components that are requirements for a full tax deferred exchange: reinvest the net exchange proceeds. So sales price, right? Less closing costs, whatever cash remains, and acquire a property with the same or greater debt. So net plus debt, right? That's your buying power.
Net plus debt.
Okay.
Net plus
Remember
debt.
that. Net plus debt. All right.
Now, let's say in an example, a property sells for $1 million. There's no closing costs for the sake of conversation. And the client decides to buy a replacement property for $800K.
Okay.
That would be classified as a partial that you referenced, Frank, right? So we have the partial 1031 exchange. We're using part of the $1 million to buy the replacement at 800K. That remainder or the shortfall of 200K with no destination for real property goes back into the exchanger's pocket and they're facing a taxable event. In my world, we call that 200K boot, like on your feet. So yeah, anytime you buy expensive boots, you pay taxes, right? So boots, boots are taxed. But those are done a lot, believe it or not, especially right now. People want to move some assets, maybe buy a replacement, rent it out to a family member, and then take some liquidity on hand, right? So there's another incentive. You do not have to do a full tax deferred exchange. You can do a partial. So another sales.
And going in the opposite direction, you can buy a replacement property that is more than the debt.
Yes.
You're just gonna you're gonna experience the entire tax deferment, right? But you're gonna obviously have to pay more. You have a loan or what have you on the property.
Sure. Yep. So remember those thresholds. So we have the floor of the transaction is the net plus the debt. You can go sky high. So it's really up to your client. I know I see here about kind of a split treatment, which is what Patrick is saying here. Owner lives in one and rents the other.
Like a duplex.
Those are very common, right, in our area, in San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Orange County, all of us. So when we're looking at these areas, if let's say Kayla is living in Unit A, right, for the last 5 years, and I had a tenant move in to Unit B.
Okay. A
buyer came in and they decided, I'm going to buy the whole duplex. We do a split in the tax code. Let's say the package sale is $1 million. So 500K, let's say I bought it for 100, married, filing joint with my husband. I would have full exemption and take all of my money on the 500 using primary tax code 121. And at the sale,
for your half, the A,
married, filing joint.
Okay.
Yep. And then Unit B would be siphoned off as a 1031 exchange. So those sale proceeds, less closing costs, would go to a segregated account held by a QI, qualified intermediary, myself, right? And then you'd use those sale proceeds to help them buy replacement. So that's my favorite. That's my favorite one, right?
Way to go, Patrick. So what if you did it in reverse? You wanted to buy a replacement property that was a duplex, and you, as the investor, wanted to move into one Unit A of the replacement property. Does it work in that direction as well?
So if it was exchanged, right, it's in a series of an exchange. It was already exchanged from one investment to the next. You would have to wait 2 full calendar years, and then you can move into any 1031 exchange property.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, so not giving tax advice.
Nope.
Right. So you could buy your dream property and just wait a couple.
Yep.
I have a gentleman that reached out today. He's a realtor in San Diego, and he has a client that has 4 condos on the beach in PB that are all about 3 to 4 million. And he's, how do I get her to list? How do we do this? Right. What are we going to buy? Well, they have their eyes set actually in Laguna Beach. So they want to buy something in Laguna Beach that's larger. We could do a multiple property exchange. So sell all 4, use the bulk sale proceeds, call it 10 million, and buy something larger.
Interesting. And I like that you said this agent is reaching out to you to help strategize.
Yep.
Right. What can
how can we make this work?
Position to the seller to make this an attractive and easy to understand process so that they go along with the strategy.
Yep.
So Jocelyn's asking, we talked about a duplex. I would imagine a fourplex would work as well, right? If you could live in Unit A and then the other 3 would be rented out.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. And same with the ADUs. Same with, for me personally, I'm in my home office, right? I'm remote running this large territory now. So when I'm remote and I'm looking at filing my taxes, right? I'm going to claim this as an investment portion because this is held for my workspace. Mm-hmm. Right. So when I sell this portion, if it's small, I mean, we'll roll with it. But if the square footage, when we break it out, say it's a $2 million sale and we're doing price per square foot at a 3,000 square foot home, right? And we can kind of look at those numbers. How large is that room? Is it 144 square feet? Is it 400? Right. So that's kind of how those work for the split treatments. Now, who gets involved? The CPA, right?
Obviously. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Without a
We've
doubt.
had a couple of them on our show too, so that'll be an upcoming episode for
Yeah,
someone.
we should have them on together, maybe.
We might, although I think they might just geek out on us, and we probably would just be sitting here.
I would love those contacts, by the way. I need a lot of good CPAs right now.
We have a couple that we would be happy to give to you after the show.
Great.
You know, I think since the last time we had you on, the popularity of ADUs has come up a lot. So
Huge.
how are ADUs impacted in this process in any way?
Yes. So ADUs can be used in a split treatment as well, right? If it's rented out, how are we filing that? You have a good CPA, are they filing that rental income on the portion that's rented out? So there's really a non-issue for any changes with 1031. ADUs are applicable in that split treatment concept. So ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. I'm saying it right. I laugh at myself because I always get tongue-tied when I say it.
Accessory dwelling unit.
Accessory dwelling unit.
We're guilty of using acronyms. Sorry about that, Dave. So have you guys had a chance to put her phone number into the chat? Oh, I think I have a phone number right here.
Oh, I can.
Can I give out your 760 number?
You can, yes.
Thank you very much. 760-622-7716. Again, we're putting that in the chat right now because you may not be able to write it down, but 760-622-7716. Okay, cool. So we're kind of coming up on time. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure that we talked about today that either hasn't been asked or we've interrupted you and you haven't had a chance to say yet?
No. I'm number one, I'm thrilled to be back. Just a couple notes for the company I'm with. I talked about security. We're national, right? So there's no restrictions with us whatsoever. You know, I have the tools, obviously, given the rapport that I've built with y'all on the show over the years. Yeah. So I do want to make a note that I will be going all the way, now that my territory is larger, up the coast the next few months in the spring. So if any offices would like me to come in, sit down with you, a client, we can schedule meetings, workshops for the offices, but put me to work for you. I'm here. If I can help in any way, call me.
Be careful what you ask for.
You would be an awesome resource. You know, Kayla, I wanted to ask you, do either yourself or anybody in your company provide more in-depth training on 1031 exchanges, like through the Board of Realtors or something like that?
Yeah, actually, I'm in line. I'm actually doing class with OCAR, but that's Orange County. So if anyone's in Orange County, that's where I'm offering pitfalls and strategies. I do a lot of custom workshops to offices. You know, if managers call and they say, hey, we're struggling with this concept, can we cater to that? Or I just did Huntington Beach, the Women's Council of Real Estate, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we focused on DSTs, alternative investment strategies, to kind of focus on the non-owner occupied and giving them something else to buy that wasn't residential, because they were getting pushed back. Well, why would I buy residential? So there's tools out there. It would technically be me for the trainings at this point. And as I build my team, that I want to make sure everyone's very vetted and train them, and then they train you. So,
awesome. Well, a little bird told me that you are working feverishly with our training department, and we will soon have a special 1031 Kayla channel with all this stuff. Because then, just to your point, you just said, is you might break it down into little bite-sized segments and just deal with the specific aspects of a 1031, a reverse 1031, all the things that you've been sharing with us today. And our agents can go on to Precipio and they can digest it soon. I'm getting the finger. Soon. Yeah, it is work in progress, but we certainly appreciate all the effort that you have put into helping us make this a reality. Because we started the program by saying, you know, there is a lot of opportunity out there in this one particular area, and we want to help empower our agents. And with your help and with your strategic thinking and your love of numbers, we are going to help our agents find more opportunities in the year to come, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
okay,
thank you.
If you come back a fifth time, I can't make any promises that we won't have that green jacket for you.
I feel like I meant the Masters, not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kayla, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
And I can tell from the comments from our audience that they've appreciated having you on as well.
Yes, I appreciate both of your time, and on to the next option of what you're representing, right? Something with Martha.
Oh,
So
something special.
I'm
Yes,
gonna
yeah.
stay on,
Please,
but
please
tell
stay
us.
on and listen, because
Yes.
I think you're going to be highly impressed with this. So thank you, Kayla.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Kayla. You've been
Take
awesome.
care.
So shifting gears, we have some special guests in the studio that are going to remind us all about something that Martha kicked off on Friday. So if you missed it, there they are. Hi, Ashley. Hi, Christina.
Hey.
So welcome to Go Live.
Thank you.
So they're going to share with you what Martha kicked off on Friday, and we are super excited about this. It's a especially important cause, and I don't want to steal any of their thunder. So I'm just going to turn it over to Ashley and Christina right now.
Thanks. Thank you, Brent. So if you missed Martha's special announcement last Friday, the American Heart Association has named Martha a Woman of Impact nominee for their Go Red for Women campaign. So this means for the next 8 weeks, Martha and our team, Team Real Heart, will be helping to raise awareness and raise funds towards the prevention of heart disease, learning how to recognize the signs and symptoms of heart disease and cardiac events, and towards how to react to a cardiac event with potentially life-saving techniques. So this campaign officially kicked off last Friday, February 3rd, and it ends on Thursday, April 6th. Martha's already received an incredible outpouring of support for the campaign. She's also received several personal stories from individuals throughout our company. On behalf of Martha and Team Real Heart, thank you to everyone who has shared their stories and their why for why they're getting involved in this important initiative. There are numerous ways you can get involved with helping to raise awareness and raise funds, and Christina is here to share all the details.
Yeah, so on the next slide, we have some ways that you can get involved. Our number one goal on Team Real Heart obviously is education. And social media is such a powerful tool when it comes to education that we really wanted to create some resources for all of you to share the message. The American Heart Association has been giving us tons of great informational resources. In fact, Martha shared a reel today that we want to share with you shortly, so we can cue that up. But the biggest ask that we have is share our content, like our content, comment on it, save it, send it to somebody you love, get that conversation started, because as we've been hearing from all these stories that people have been reaching out to Martha and on social media, a lot of times education is really key when it comes to prevention and, getting in and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and taking care of loved ones. So we're going to share one of the videos that Martha shared today, and it's really fun, and all of the information is in the comments, so it's really easy to access and save and share. And while they're queuing it up, we do have lots of social media images already on MyConnect. So we have a few examples, but some of them are educational resources. Well, I'll give you a location for that on MyConnect after the video as well.
I just flipped the switch. I just flipped the switch. I just flipped the switch.
Great, so really fun educational videos, and I know that's quick, so we made sure to include all of that important information in the caption. So make sure that you go to Martha's Instagram or Facebook, go share it to your own page, send it to somebody, save the information for later. And then on the next slide, these are just a few examples of the resources that we'll be adding to MyConnect that you can save and share on your own pages. I created a folder under the social media images tab just for Team Real Heart, so you can access those there. I can also send some of them out in my email that I send out every Friday so that you can access the new ones that we create. And then finally, if you are able, we would love your donations. Our number one goal is always the education, but we are raising funds as well for Team Real Heart, so anything helps.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Christina and her team have done a phenomenal job with putting together all of this entire social media campaign. So please, I just want to echo her message of just liking, sharing, watching the content that is produced with Martha and Christina's team. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, and thanks, Brent and Dean.
You're welcome.
Well,
Where's Brent?
I have jumped in both feet on this whole Go Red, so I'm super excited. And I know that you guys will share Martha's passion and Ashley's passion and the why this is such an important initiative for us as a company. We have been personally at the company level and the agent level, and Martha's personal family, and I'm sure many of you have as well been impacted by a heart disease. And what I thought was interesting, I don't know if you had a chance, because I was busy putting on my new outfit. I didn't get to see if you talked a little bit about the differences between men's symptoms and women's symptoms. And I think that was one of the things, the video, the Instagram that Martha was just showing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it highlights.
So one thing that I thought was interesting, and I was really quite shocked by this, is that nearly 70% of postgraduate medical trainees report minimal to no training regarding gender-based medical concepts, right? So again, the difference in symptoms between male patients and female patients when it comes to cardiovascular health. And only 42% of cardiologists report feeling prepared to adequately discuss heart disease specific to women. And that's where you guys come in, because over the next 8 weeks, we are going to be giving out educational information like this, and with Christina and marketing's help, we're going to have social media posts that we're going to ask you to repost, because as they both mentioned, education is key. I mean, clearly you have medical professionals who feel ill-equipped, right? So we want to make sure that everyone gets this information out. So on that note, we're going to wrap up. So thank you very much, Christina and Ashley. Appreciate that.
Great job. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
You know how Martha likes to wrap up every go live with a quote. So we
absolutely.
wanted to make sure that we did that. Otherwise, we'd get in trouble.
We don't want that.
So I asked Ashley to help me with this, because when I think about this initiative and the impact it can have on everybody and the impact that Martha has on everybody, I think of ripples, where you drop a pebble into a body of water, and then the ripples this one looks like ripples skipping, but the idea of ripples cascading out, right?
It touches many people.
Right. So here we have, the American Heart Association honoring Martha as a Women of Heart, and we have Real Heart, our team, that our core team ripples out to the expanded team, which then ripples out to all of you and all of the effort that we know you're going to assist us with. It's not just financial, it's a lot of the tasks and all of the education stuff. So the actions of one person can really, truly impact a lot of people. And Mother Teresa agrees with us. So yeah, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. So thank you guys for being part of our ripples today. Yes. We really appreciate it, and be on the lookout for information from marketing and from Martha regarding this campaign over the next 8 weeks. I think we're going to do a lot of good. I know we're going to do a lot of good.
We absolutely are.
Next week, you want to stay tuned, because we have it's our second Tuesday of the month. And being that it's the second Tuesday of the month, we have Stephen Thomas back. And I am so grateful that we have him able to come on and talk to our agents, because it just seems like in all the last several months, the last year, we needed somebody of our own to help us decipher what the Fed is doing. Exactly. I can't think of a better time to have someone like Stephen Thomas helping us and helping our agents understand and how to articulate this to their clients and to their sphere. So stay tuned next week, next Tuesday, 3 o'clock, go live with Stephen Thomas. Bye, everybody.
All right. See you then. Bye-bye.